Live. Hello. So welcome to our third show of the Desk Chicks. I'm Misty Lynn from Bittersweet Blessing, and my co-host is Patty Burgess. Burgess.
Almost.
Burgess. We are interviewing Paula Boylan today, and Paula has a pretty amazing story, and I feel really blessed that she has come forward to speak on this. Just a little bit about the Death Chicks before we begin. Patty and I decided to start the show because we've both felt called to help bring death, which is part of life, into the common area of living. We feel that it's been in the closet and in the dark and under closed lips for too long. It's a part of life that everyone experiences, and we want it to be something that people can talk about openly. So that's why we're here, and that's what the Death Chicks is about, to start these conversations. Now, having said that, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties bringing Paula in. So if you hear the little pings, it's because I've had to keep some communication open to work on bringing Paula in. So I want to send out a big special thank you to Heidi, who has helped us with this. And it looks like, woohoo, it looks like Paula is here.
No wonder.
So.
Oh, there's a dog who thinks someone is now at the door.
We welcome your dog, too.
So the best laid plans and your worst nightmare coming to be, but you know what? That's okay. This is real life, and this is what's happening. So he may have some things to say about this, too.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. We're thrilled that you're here. Misty, thank you. And actually, I love the way you say my name. I wish it was my birth pronunciation because it sounds so much more. It sounds kind of French when you say Patty Burgess. It is Patty Burgess, but I love that that's what you call me. So for you, I'm whatever you want me to be. Yes, and I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this show with Misty because we both found ourselves separately together in what we would call this death space, and both pretty intrigued, both taking a deep dive in sort of different directions for different reasons. On a later show, we're going to be talking a little bit about our stories and how we got here and what we're going to be doing. So it's very exciting, and so is this forum. And then we've got people like Paula who are joining us today to share with us their story. So let me give you a proper introduction for Paula. Paula's a leading-edge evolution life coach, and that's for those who are in the forefront of conscious awakening, and I love that term because we certainly don't want to awaken unconscious. That would not be good, but I do love that term because it means so much. Now, Paula brings a wealth of experience and 30 years of experience and application in philosophy, meditation, yoga, quantum physics, so much more to talk about, and that's probably could be a whole nother show, but she's got a wealth of information, wants you to know that. Paula's embraced this awakening process in the midst of kids and marriage and work and career. It's often said that, you know, if you give the guru on a mountain 3 kids and a mortgage, let's see how guru-like he is, right? So it's nice to know that this process can happen in the midst of our everyday, crazy, chaotic lives, and that you've obviously found a way to carve out and a process to help others carve out a way to find their place in this conscious awakening movement. What I'm excited about today, Paula, is that you're here to talk with us about the kinds of topics around our subject, which is death, dying, grief, and loss, embracing death, finding a deeper, perhaps conscious awakening when it comes to death and dying. And your very personal experience, we're looking forward to hearing, because you lost your beloved parents 2 years apart. And I don't know if it was at the same time or shortly thereafter, where you had an at-risk suicidal teenage son, and you faced the very real possibility of him taking his own life. Why I find this fascinating that you're even here, because most parents who face this very thing, not to say that they don't want to get help for their child or help and greater insight, but for many people this is a topic that they would turn away to. And it's my understanding, based on the little that we know about you now, and hope we get to know about you, that you really dove into this process. You turned to this to use this to really understand more about emerging into this life-death cycle and using it for your healing and your clients as well. So welcome. We're thrilled to hear from you, and let's get going.
Thank you. Wonderful. So nice to be here. What a wonderful topic that you're bringing out into the open. I mean, death is a part of life. I don't know why we avoid it. We avoid talking about it. It's like, is it going to go away because we sweep it under the carpet? No, it's here. You know, it is tough to even lose parents. Yes, we know it's very likely that our parents will not live as long as we do, but still, that's I mean, I felt especially when I lost my mother, that I had lost my anchor in this planet because I was so close with her. She passed in 2004, and my son started to have issues around the time of puberty, and he was 13 when my mother passed. So it was around the same time that he started to deal with that. And I think that any parent who sees that their child is suffering like that is going to take that and run with it. There's no way that I could let him suffer and not become totally involved. And it is a difficult, I think I'll probably do some kind of a hangout on air to help parents with teens who have depression, because it's not an easy arena to navigate by any sense of the imagination. Especially when it took him until about 20 to actually fight these demons. Thank goodness he's 24 in a couple of months, and he's also going to graduate university in a couple of months. So really great story, but it was not an easy journey. When I thought he may take his life, I mean, we're talking about a teenage boy here. So teenage boys already tend to be a little bit, they can have a death wish. You know, they're driving fast in their cars and they're partying, and when you really don't want to live anymore, he really could take that to the limits. So it was tough, and I realized that he was someone. They're not our little babies. We're not holding them safely in our arms anymore, and they will make their own choices. And so when I realized that he may make that choice to take his own life, I had to come to terms with that. And I'm a meditator. I've been meditating at that point for about 25 years. And so I just sat one night and I went into deep meditation, and I went to the place where he had taken his life, and I sat with that. Not easy, but once you have faced your fears about something and lived it, it loses its power over you. So luckily I didn't. I realized that even if that had happened, I would still be here, I would still be breathing, and it wasn't my choice anyways. So, you know, death is hard, but we can get through it. We all do it. We all get through it, whether it's a beloved pet who takes their life, or, I mean, who runs out in front of a car or happens to die, or life happens.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. What stood out for me, and I just want to clarify, was that the turning point for you from being fraught with worry over your son taking his life was when you stopped and fully looked at it and pretended, imagined, thought about what life would be like if it had happened. Mm-hmm. And then when you sat with that, when you faced your fear, coming from that place of deep peace that you can access during meditation and quiet times, this is when it allowed you to move forward in your day with a greater sense of peace and acceptance. Is this right?
Yeah, because I think that when something scares you, you tend not to look at it. But if you can face it straight on, dead on actually, maybe that's where that saying comes from, then you can find peace with it. I know that you've just recently lost your mom, Myste. That's not an easy thing to go through. It's very difficult to lose those we love, but we do get up the next day and we do go on, and it gets easier as time goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because after I lost my mom, I created a course and I called it Facing Fear When Death is Near. So it's, to me, it's amazing that you speak so loudly to this, and I knew it was powerful when it happened with me, but to hear that method, relatively simple method of just facing your fear head on instead of running from it, could be used in a case of risk of suicide. So, yeah, wow. With your mother, when we were talking about doing this show, you mentioned a story about a pattern of phoning your mother, and then there was another story about holding your mom's hands. Would like to share any of those stories with our listeners. And while you're doing so, I just want to say a note to our viewers today that we don't have comment tracker, but I am going to go and have a look and see if there's any viewers commenting. So if there's any questions or anything, I will be able to relay those to Paula.
Okay. Yes, just I was holding my mother's hand as she passed, and during the mourning process, it didn't happen at that time. That's kind of a time where I think you go into a bit of shock. But I realized that I was okay the moment before she passed, I was okay the moment that she passed, and I was okay the moment after she passed. And so when we come to realize that this life is just moments of now, that we can handle whatever happens to us in the moment of now. And that was quite a profound thing to come to terms with. So that was a very good thing. And I realized that I didn't always live in Canada. I worked abroad, and so I wasn't always, although I was very close with my mother, when I got back to Canada and started living here for, on a more, especially after my father died, I started to call my mother every morning at 7:30 just to let her know that I was thinking about her. And when she passed, I felt lost. I didn't know what to do at 7:30. I'd look at the clock and think, oh no, I can't phone her. So I started in my head saying, hi Mom, how's it going? And telling her about my day and what I was going to do. And I realized that I still had this connection with her. It was probably a couple of years of doing that. Now I realize that she's in my heart all the time. I don't have to choose a time to contact her. She's always there. So they are the people that we love. They just, energy is never created or destroyed. It just changes form, and you still feel these people with you. So.
I love that sentiment, and I love the saying that goes along with that, which is death ends a life, not a relationship.
Exactly, yeah.
You can continue to talk with them, and I think that's what one of the purposes for our show too, is that we can share with people that you really can have that relationship ongoing. It doesn't have to end at death.
Right.
Whether there's unfinished business, let's say, whether that relationship was not, maybe there was tension or struggle within that relationship. People think that it remains that way sometimes when a death occurs if they don't view this as a continuum. That gets into a lot of personal, could be religious belief systems, but just our understandings, our upbringings. But I think it is wonderful to frame death as part of this ongoing process and perhaps this thin veil. I've seen personally a lot of healing when people begin to view that way. I'm not saying that it always happens, and I'm not saying that it happens quickly, but that once you're having that communication, as you did with your mom, to continue at 7:30 every day, I bet you there were times, and maybe you can share that with us, where you sat back and you listened and you might have gotten some sense of connection or response or something like that. Did that happen for you?
Oh, yes, it still happens today.
Okay.
She's always with me, especially times that are particularly difficult. I'll say, you know, what do you think, Mom? She was an amazing, amazing woman. I was blessed with, like, the Mother Teresa of mothers. So
That's wonderful.
I was very lucky. So, you know, and during the times that I thought Drew might take his life, you know, I felt her presence with me then as well. And she had a very, very healthy way of looking at death. That she wasn't, my father was quite afraid of death. She was just the opposite. And we grew up with her saying, you never know when your time is coming, and make sure that you've made your peace with everyone. And she never said goodbye without saying, I love you. So, you know, she taught us some good things about the cycle of life, and that, you know, she would still be with us. Yeah, so we're lucky.
That's interesting. It's funny because my parents, who have both passed, my mother too was not afraid of death. She did not have any real faith-based beliefs. In fact, she said to me that I think when you die, you're like splat done like a bug in a rug. Well, there's a way to look at it. I did put a little bit more frills around death myself, but just to make it sound better. But my father was very fearful. Yeah. And what's so interesting is I'm of the belief that there are maybe some places where we can affect what our end is like, especially if we look at it and we talk. I mean, if we don't look at it, it's you know, up to whatever happens. But my father dropped dead only 12 hours after their 50th anniversary party. And although it was a shock, we all agreed that, number one, he would have made a miserable patient. So, you know, he could have been in trouble on that. And two, it was perfection. You can have shock and perfection, I think, at the same time, and that is an odd combination of emotions. You can be emotionally peaked and it still be okay, and that's what I learned from that. I was so glad that that's how it happened for him, because he was afraid there was no time. Within a half hour, not even then, of the first symptom, he was gone. And we were only with him, you know, and he was fine. Not fine, obviously there was something going on. Whereas my mother, her illness gave us it was a long trajectory, and it gave us time to check in, to be connected, to say everything that needed to be said. So I think, you know, people say when you see one death, you see one death. It's not like you've seen them all. And there are huge gifts within each version of that.
Yes.
That was my experience.
Yes, it is a gift. It is, you know, the two things that were most painful in life, I think, are, and you're both women. Mother, I think you're a mother, Misty. I'm not sure about Patty, but, you know, it's not easy to bring life into the world. And it's not particularly easy to see life go either. But if you were to look at the parts of your life that probably stand out as being the most bittersweet, the most amazing, they're those two. At least for me, it was, you know, holding my mother's hand as she left and bringing my daughter into the world. Those are the two most amazing things that have happened. So, you know, the things that mean the most to us are sometimes painful, and then there's so much emotion attached to them. So, yeah, it's an amazing life. We shouldn't shy away from the things that hurt, or that are, you know, the big things, the things that bring us the most emotion. Otherwise, we're living kind of a flat life, aren't we?
Yeah, very well said. There's a few things I want to touch on. One is I know I'd like to hear about you talk a bit more about the birth, death, and how this relates to awakening. And before I get to that, there is a question from a viewer, Scott Scowcroft. And Scott, I'm not sure if I'm saying your last name correctly. We've talked many times, but I'm having trouble with last names these days. Anyhow, Scott, he's wondering, and I'm not sure if I have this right, but he's wondering if your son, he said if he avoided a healthy grieving process, and was this potentially a contributing factor for his being at risk for suicide? And he just does say that he recognizes it's different for adults and children. Yeah, would you like to speak to that a bit? And I think he might be, this is where I'm a little bit unclear, and Scott, if you want to type this in, talking about the son grieving the loss of the grandparents. I'm not quite sure the angle on that, but it was a question, so I thought I'd put it out there.
I think it's hard to know if another person has ever actually grieved to the point where they need to come to peace with something. Especially teenagers, they don't share a lot with their parents all the time, especially the important stuff. I'm so thankful that he did share when it was, he came to me and said, "Mom, you need to take me to the hospital." Those kinds of things, I'm very happy he shared. I honestly don't know. I found out during the process of, if this was treatment-resistant clinical depression, he wasn't responding to the medications they were trying, and so I had to find out if it ran in our family. Boy, that's like pulling teeth to try to get, people to talk about depression in the family, especially when you're looking at, my father was born 1927. So to get anybody in that family to open up and suggest that, yes, my father may have struggled with depression was, not a happy thing to do. Finally, we did find out that there was some depression in the family, or what they think was depression. I don't know if that was a contributing factor. I know that teens, if they're going to show signs of this, it tends to happen around the time of the hormonal changes with 13, 14, 15. I don't know. I do know that, getting back to the depression thing, it was a multifactorial approach to his wellness, in that we found some medication that helped. And we also, he dealt with some behavior modification therapies to change the way that he looked at life, and that was a very important aspect of it. I don't know what to say. I can tell you that he'll have a degree in philosophy, and he says that probably saved him more than anything else, was opening the way he looks at the world. So, who knows? I believe in reincarnation. I believe that he's an old soul. I don't know what his soul is here to learn this time. I just love him every day, and hope that we all get through this. I know we will. Can you say?
I think it's so interesting you say that. I think life itself is a series of, little, medium-sized, and large losses.
Yes.
Many of which we don't even know until we hit them. I mean, even in infancy, there are some losses when someone moves away from you and you're crying for something and there's a misunderstanding. Those things, I think, have impact. To what degree, we don't know. To what degree for each individual person, we don't know. But it is amazing to me that if we do look at life, I mean, I look at a series of wonderful gains too, yes. But in terms of grieving, we have many, many, many losses, and we never know, even a small one, how it lodges in our psyche, in our system, in our nervous system. And I think one of the best things we can do, now I'm not a bio parent. I say, you birth them and I'll love them later. I'm the step parent. And but I think just the best thing we can do for our kids is allow them to be authentic and allow them to have these feelings in a loving container. Easy to say, and I'm not a bio parent, so I can't even imagine on a day-to-day basis what that must have been like for you. But so thrilled that you're willing to share, that journey. And what did you do on a regular basis while you were in the height of that? Maybe people watching this are dealing with their own experiences and family members with suicide. What did you do? Was there a kind of vigilance, or was there a kind of combination of vigilance and openness? How did you navigate?
What did I do to help him or to help myself through that?
Well, actually both, but to help him as well, because that's part of the give and take.
Okay. It's such a complex issue because, okay, I live in Canada. We have, Myste, we have somewhat free healthcare here. It means that everybody gets a standard, basic healthcare. There's not a lot of psychologists or psychiatrists within our system that are child psychiatrists. So especially, I don't live in Toronto. I live about an hour and a half outside of Toronto. I live in a place called Niagara, right by Niagara Falls. It means that we don't have access to a lot of, there was one psychiatrist for children in our entire region of about 350,000 people. So there was a waiting list and a line a few years long, and I didn't have the time to live with that. I do know one thing is that you get a lot more bees with honey than vinegar. So you make friends out there, you find out what you have to do. I realized that I was going to have to find a psychiatrist who was willing to take on my son, who didn't normally deal with children, who was an adult psychiatrist, and that they were going to have to, they're very afraid to give teens antidepressants because there have been a few suicides that they've been able to attribute to the medications. So you almost have to get them to, to loosen up a little bit and please give them some medication. I'm not for medication. I'm actually quite a natural, treating things naturally. But when you see someone who obviously has some chemical imbalances, you want them to be treated to save their life. I was like a dog with a bone. I didn't give up. There's not a lot of help for, and I know that I'll likely probably get more involved with this and help other parents of teens, because in my child's school alone, it's a small school. I think there were 350 kids in his high school. In the time that he went, 4 kids took their lives. This is not, this happens, and when we don't talk about it and when we don't help one another, it's going to continue to happen because kids don't feel comfortable coming forward and saying, I don't feel good. I'm afraid. I think I'm going to take my life. But the one thing he did say to me, and I trust this kid, I knew, he came out of the womb and didn't cry. He just looked around like, oh my God, I'm here again. So when he said to me, he said, you need to take me to the doctor, and I did, and it was going to be, they were going to put him into the hospital, but because he'd brought himself there, they weren't admitting him. He took one look at it and he said, no, I'm not staying here. And he came home and he said, if you put me there, I will kill myself. I'll kill myself there. And I talked to a nurse, and she said, we keep them as safe as we can, but they are not safe here. If they have it in their mind to kill themselves, they'll find a way to do it. So I kept him at home and I watched him, and we got it through it day by day by day. That's all you can do. There were days that this beautiful boy, who was he had so much life as a child. He was just always laughing, and he got to the point where he slept 20 hours a day. He wouldn't shave. He wouldn't eat. He was harder to care for than he was when he was an infant because he's a man now. He's 6 feet and weighs 150 pounds, and I'm 5 feet, weigh 100 pounds. What do you do with this person? It was hard. It was hard, but we got through it. And
does he speak about this, or is this something he doesn't care to share?
At the time, he was very open. He shared with his school. His school was amazing, absolutely amazing. There were teachers who, came to our home to teach him on their own time to make sure that he got his high school graduation diploma.
he's open about it to the extent, I mean, he certainly was then, because he understands what it's like and he doesn't want it to happen to anyone else. I don't know, his life is going in a different direction now. You know, he's finishing university, he's interviewing for jobs, he's in a very different place. I have a feeling that he'll do something with his life to help others, but I think he's in a stage now where he's 24. He's got other things on his plate, other places he's going. But yeah, you know, it's definitely had an impact on him, and he has a mother who's quite a fighter, so you know that has to rub off on him. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you guys are talking about this, because it's so important. You know, death is such a part of life. I don't know why we just don't open up and share.
I don't know either. Do you know, Misty, why we don't? Well, we're starting.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when I lost my mom, that was the biggest thing. It was like this big, just hitting me, like, as a culture, we're such babies when it comes to death. Like, everyone does it, no one's talking about it, and it hit me really hard, this realization, and that's why we're here now with this show. And I really want to thank you, Paula, for coming and for speaking about suicide. Like, who wants to talk about suicide to their closest friend, let alone to, you know, on YouTube and on Hangouts on Air? So thank you so much, and let's hope that the word gets out and that people can begin to have these conversations and know that the healing process. So when we keep things in, it's like there's that fear factor. So we stuff it down, and then it eats away at our unconscious minds, and it can grow. But when we bring it out and put it on the table and talk about it, the fear and the darkness and the heaviness around it tends to dissolve. So I hope that we've helped with some dissolving today. And before we go, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've joined us today when you're fighting a cold, so we're very thankful for that. I'd like to share how people can get in touch with you. So Paula has, she is a coach. You can connect with her at paulaboylan.com. And she also has a website, and we'll be sure to put this in the comments after, and it's pollinate.com. And if you go to pollinate.com, I love that. That's so fun, pollinate. It's beautiful.
It's pollinate and cultivate a more heart-centered human intelligence. That's what it's about. So.
Beautiful.
That sounds great. That sounds great. So Paula has for you, it's a complimentary Flow with Life. It's an introductory course to assist in the awakening process. And I know when we talked pre-show, Paula, you mentioned that the life-death cycle was connected to something you call awakening. And just before you go, would you like to speak a little bit to that?
I would, because it's interesting. Patty, when she was speaking earlier, talked about the veils. And really, the veils to me, that's what I've called it forever. We come here with a lot of veils, you know, covering our eyes. And the awakening process is just taking those veils off so that we can see life for really what it is. The less fear we have around life, the more awake we are. And when we're awake, we can enjoy life. We can, it's our life. It's our heart-centered life. It's not the life that anyone around us tells us we should live, whether that be dogmatic, whatever, corporations, you know, it's just living a very heart-centered, awake life without fear. And you know that when we're able to open up and embrace things that we think scare us, fear is what holds us back. Fear of talking on a hangout on air, fear of whatever, you know, of talking about death. Death doesn't have any power over me anymore. Because I faced it head on. And I'm glad you're doing the same.
Yeah, you're here. Thank you very much, Paula. Patty, would you have any parting words? Oh, before we go, I just want to do a quick shout out to all our viewers and for everyone who shared about our show and all the behind the scenes tech support that we've have received. So thank you. And deep, sincere thanks to you, Paula. I'm really happy we had this time together.
Thank you, Misty. Thank you for asking me to come on.
Absolutely. And I have to thank Misty for just she really kind of spearheads the techie part. I show up and do a couple of other things, but Misty, I really appreciate you taking care of that. Yet learn so that we can go back and forth so that this show could happen in case Misty somehow wanted to go off to somewhere warm, like, I don't know, like the south of Canada or something. It's way too cold. But anyway, no, I love this forum. I love this format. And Paula, I'm so thrilled that you decided to come on and talk about it. And I'm sure we could keep going forever. But do visit Paula at paulaboylan.com and learn about that awakening process and see if it's something for you. We appreciate it. I think next week we don't have a scheduled guest. We're not sure. We're looking at a couple of different people who may be available. If not, you may have us death chickies to yourself and learn more a little bit about us, how we got going with this, and some of the individual stories that got us here to this place on Google Hangout and the world. So thank you. That's it for me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Until next week. Bye-bye for now.
Take good care.